Right now, as you're watching this video, there's another version of you making a completely different choice. Maybe they decided to scroll past this video entirely. Maybe they're making coffee instead of tea. Maybe they took a left turn instead of a right turn this morning and met someone who had changed their life forever. This isn't science fiction or wishful thinking. According to the mathematics of quantum mechanics and a theory that's been quietly revolutionizing physics for decades, these other versions of you aren't just possible, they're inevitable. And the boundary between your reality and theirs might be far thinner than you ever imagined. I know that sounds impossible. After all, you're here in this moment, experiencing this singular reality where only one thing happens at a time. You made specific choices to end up watching this video. You have clear memories of a single, linear path through life. But what if I told you that this feeling of living in just one reality might be the universe's most convincing illusion? What if every moment of your life you're actually slipping between infinite versions of yourself and you just don't notice the transition? Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most mind-bending concepts in modern physics, quantum superposition theory, and its implications for the nature of reality itself. We'll journey through the strange world where particles can be in multiple places at once, where the very act of observation changes the universe, and where the mathematics suggests that every possible version of reality exists simultaneously in what physicists call the multiverse. I have to admit, when I first encountered these ideas years ago, they kept me awake at night, not because they were frightening, but because they were so beautifully strange that they rewired how I thought about existence itself. There's something both humbling and oddly comforting about the possibility that reality is far stranger and more expansive than our everyday experience suggests. It makes you wonder, if there are infinite versions of you out there, living infinite variations of your life, what does that mean for the choices you make? What does it mean to be you? Let's start at the beginning, with a simple question that opens the door to extraordinary possibilities. What is quantum superposition, and why should it matter to you? At its heart, quantum superposition is the principle that tiny particles, the building blocks of everything you see and touch, can exist in multiple states simultaneously. Not one state or another, but all possible states at once, until something forces them to choose. It's as if a coin could spin forever, being both heads and tails at the same time, only settling into one state when you catch it and look. This isn't just theoretical speculation. Scientists have been observing and measuring superposition for nearly a century. They've watched electrons pass through multiple paths simultaneously. They've seen photons behave as both particles and waves at the exact same moment. They've created laboratory conditions where atoms exist in what can only be described as multiple realities layered on top of each other. But here's where it gets interesting for you and me. If the fundamental particles that make up our bodies and our world can exist in multiple states at once, what does that mean for larger systems? What does it mean for consciousness? What does it mean for the reality you're experiencing right now? Think about the last time you stood at a crossroads in your life. Maybe it was choosing a college, accepting a job offer, or deciding whether to text someone you hadn't spoken to in years. In that moment of decision, you probably felt the weight of different possible futures stretching out before you. You might have even imagined how your life would unfold down each path. Now, what if I told you that according to quantum mechanics, you didn't just imagine those other paths, you actually took them? In the framework of quantum superposition, every time the universe faces a choice at the quantum level, it doesn't pick just one option. It takes all of them, creating separate branches of reality for each possibility. This is where quantum superposition stops being just a curiosity about tiny particles and becomes a profound statement about the nature of existence itself. If every quantum interaction creates a branching point in reality, then the universe isn't just one story unfolding, it's every possible story all happening at once. The mathematical foundation for this extraordinary claim comes from something called the Schrödinger equation, named after the physicist Erwin Schrödinger. This equation describes how quantum systems evolve over time, and it has a peculiar property. If you have multiple possible solutions, any combination of those solutions is also a valid solution. What this means in practical terms is profound. If a particle can be in state A or state B, the mathematics tells us it can also be in a state that's simultaneously A and B. Not sometimes A and sometimes B, but genuinely both at the same time. The wave function, as physicists call it, describes all possible states of a system existing in perfect mathematical harmony. But Schrödinger himself was troubled by the implications of his own equation. To illustrate the apparent absurdity, he proposed a famous thought experiment. Imagine a cat in a sealed box with a device that has a 50% chance of releasing poison based on the decay of a radioactive atom. According to quantum mechanics, until someone opens the box to check, the atom exists in superposition, both decayed and not decayed. This means the cat would be simultaneously alive and dead. Schrödinger intended this as a criticism, a way to show that quantum mechanics must be incomplete because cats simply aren't both alive and dead. But what if he was wrong? What if cats and everything else really can exist in multiple states simultaneously, and we just experience one branch of that reality? I find myself wondering sometimes about the versions of this conversation happening in parallel realities. In one universe, maybe I explained this concept differently, and it clicked for you in a completely new way. In another, perhaps you discovered quantum mechanics through a different video entirely, or maybe you're not watching videos about physics at all. You're outside at stars that shine, looking up differently in that reality. These aren't just flights of imagination. If the mathematics of quantum mechanics is correct, these parallel moments are as real as this one. The only difference is that we're experiencing this particular thread in the vast tapestry of existence. This brings us to one of the most mysterious aspects of quantum superposition, the role of observation. When scientists measure a quantum system in superposition, something remarkable happens. The system appears to choose a single state from all the possibilities, collapsing from a cloud of potential into a definite reality. This is called the observer effect, and it's been experimentally verified countless times. The famous double-slit experiment demonstrates this perfectly. When you fire particles at a screen with two slits, they create an interference pattern that only makes sense if each particle somehow goes through both slits simultaneously. But the moment you try to observe which slit the particle goes through, the interference pattern disappears. It's as if the particle knows it's being watched and changes its behavior accordingly. For decades, physicists have debated what this means. Some suggest that consciousness itself plays a role in collapsing the wave function, that the act of conscious observation literally creates reality. Others argue that any interaction with the environment, whether conscious or not, causes the collapse. But there's a third interpretation, one that preserves the strange beauty of quantum superposition while explaining our experience of a single reality. What if there is no collapse at all? What if every possible outcome happens, but in different branches of reality that become separated from each other? Imagine you're walking through a forest and come to a fork in the path. In classical thinking, You choose one path and leave the other unexplored, but in the quantum multiverse, you take both paths. One version of you goes left, experiences everything that path has to offer, and carries those memories forward. Another version goes right, accumulating a different set of experiences and memories. Both versions are equally real, equally you, but they can no longer interact with each other. They've become separated into different branches of reality. From the perspective of each version, it seems like they made a choice, and the other path simply ceased to exist. But from the perspective of the whole universe, both paths were taken. This is the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, and it suggests something extraordinary. Every time anything in the universe faces a quantum choice, which happens trillions of times per second, reality splits into multiple branches to accommodate all possibilities. The implications of this constant branching are staggering. If the many worlds interpretation is correct, then the number of parallel universes is not just large, it's infinite and growing exponentially with each passing moment. Every quantum interaction, from the decay of a radioactive atom to the firing of a neuron in your brain, creates new branches in the ever-expanding tree of reality. In some of these branches, the differences are microscopic. Perhaps a single photon took a slightly different path. In others, the differences compound over time into dramatically different realities. There are branches where you made different life choices, branches where historical events unfolded differently, branches where the laws of physics themselves might vary in subtle ways. This isn't science fiction speculation. It's a serious interpretation of quantum mechanics supported by rigorous mathematics. The physicist Hugh Everett III first proposed this idea in the 1950s, and it's gained increasing support among physicists who appreciate its mathematical elegance and its ability to explain quantum phenomena without introducing arbitrary collapse mechanisms. What's particularly fascinating is that this branching doesn't require any special mechanism or energy. It's simply what the Schrödinger equation predicts will happen when quantum systems interact. The universe splits not because of some external force, but because the mathematics of quantum mechanics naturally describes a reality where all possibilities coexist. Sometimes I try to wrap my mind around what this means for personal identity. If there are countless versions of me across different branches of reality, which one is the real me? The answer, according to the many worlds interpretation, is that they all are. Each version experiences their reality as completely real and valid, with no awareness of the other branches. It's humbling and liberating at the same time. Humbling because it suggests that the version of reality you experience is just one thread in an infinite tapestry. Liberating because it means that somewhere in the multiverse, every possibility you've ever wondered about has actually occurred. But if parallel realities are constantly being created, why don't we experience them directly? Why do we feel locked into a single, consistent reality instead of perceiving the quantum superposition that supposedly underlies everything? The answer lies in a process called quantum decoherence. When quantum systems interact with their environment, and in our warm, bustling universe, everything is constantly interacting with everything else. The delicate superposition states that allow for multiple realities become entangled with countless other particles. Think of it like trying to maintain a perfect musical harmony in a noisy room. The pure notes become mixed with background noise until the original harmony is lost in a cacophony of sound. Similarly, quantum superpositions become entangled with so many environmental factors that the different branches of reality lose their ability to interfere with each other. This doesn't destroy the parallel realities, it just separates them. Each branch continues to exist and evolve according to its own timeline, but they can no longer influence each other. From your perspective within one branch, it appears as though the other possibilities have vanished, leaving you with the illusion of a single, definite reality. Recent experiments have shown that quantum coherence, the property that allows superposition states to exist, can be preserved for longer and longer periods as scientists learn to isolate systems from environmental interference. They've managed to keep individual particles in superposition for hours, and even some larger systems for measurable periods of time. To understand decoherence better, imagine you're at a party where everyone is having separate conversations. At first, you might be able to follow multiple conversations simultaneously, a bit like being in quantum superposition. But as the room gets noisier and more people join in, each conversation becomes isolated from the others. You can only focus on one conversation at a time, even though all the others continue happening around you. This is similar to what happens with quantum realities. The different branches don't disappear, they just become separated by the noise and interaction of a complex universe. Each branch continues its own conversation, so to speak, but they can no longer hear or influence each other. Let's return to the double slit experiment, because it beautifully illustrates how quantum superposition might work in practice and why we don't normally notice it. When you fire particles one at a time toward two slits, each particle somehow goes through both slits simultaneously, creating an interference pattern on the detector screen. But here's the crucial point. The particle doesn't just go through both slits. According to the many worlds interpretation, reality splits into two branches, one where the particle goes through the left slit and one where it goes through the right slit. The interference pattern emerges because these two branches can still influence each other before decoherence separates them. When you add a detector to see which slit the particle goes through, you're not just passively observing, you're entangling the particle with a macroscopic measuring device. This entanglement causes rapid decoherence, separating the two branches so quickly that they can no longer interfere with each other. The interference pattern disappears not because consciousness collapses the wave function, but because the act of measurement creates separate, non-interfering realities. In one branch, you observe the particle going through the left slit and see no interference. In another branch, you observe it going through the right slit and also see no interference. Both versions of you are convinced that their observation revealed the true path of the particle, but actually, both paths were taken in parallel realities. This interpretation preserves the weird quantum behavior while explaining why macroscopic objects, like measuring devices and human observers, appear to exist in definite states. We're not exempt from quantum mechanics. We're just so large and complex that we decohere almost instantly into separate branches of reality. As we delve deeper into this quantum rabbit hole, questions multiply faster than universe branches. If infinite realities exist, how do we test this theory? What does it mean for free will and personal responsibility? And perhaps most intriguingly, could there be ways to detect or even communicate with these parallel versions of ourselves? The mathematics suggests possibilities that sound like pure science fiction, but might be achievable through quantum technologies we're only beginning to develop. From quantum computers that might tap into parallel processing power across multiple realities to experiments that could provide evidence for the existence of other branches, we're standing at the threshold of discoveries that could fundamentally change how we understand existence itself. But to understand these possibilities, we need to explore how quantum superposition scales up from individual particles to complex systems, and what recent breakthroughs in quantum technology might tell us about the nature of reality. Now comes perhaps the most profound question of all. If individual particles can exist in superposition, what happens when we scale up to larger and larger systems? Does quantum weirdness simply fade away at some arbitrary boundary, or does it persist all the way up to the level of human consciousness and beyond? For decades, physicists assumed there must be some natural cut-off point where quantum effects give way to classical behaviour. After all, we don't see cats that are simultaneously alive and dead, or people who exist in multiple locations at once. But recent experiments have been pushing this boundary further and further, revealing that quantum superposition can persist in surprisingly large systems. Scientists have now demonstrated superposition in molecules containing thousands of atoms, in mechanical oscillators visible to the naked eye, and even in systems approaching the scale of living organisms. Each breakthrough suggests that the transition from quantum to classical behaviour isn't a sharp line, but a gradual fade, determined not by size alone, but by how well a system can be isolated from its environment. This raises a startling possibility. Perhaps macroscopic objects, including living beings, don't lose their quantum nature entirely. Perhaps we exist in superposition too, but the branches of reality separate so quickly through decoherence that we never notice the splitting happen. I often wonder if there's a moment, perhaps lasting only femtoseconds, where I exist in multiple states before reality branches. Maybe there's an instant where I'm simultaneously reaching for my morning coffee and leaving it on the counter, where I'm both speaking these words and choosing different ones entirely. The split happens so fast that by the time my consciousness processes it, I'm already committed to one branch, carrying only the memory of a single choice. But it's a humbling thought, really. All the certainty we feel about our decisions, our paths through life, might be nothing more than the perspective of one branch among infinite others, each equally convinced of their own singular reality. This brings us to one of the most controversial and fascinating frontiers in quantum mechanics: the possibility that consciousness itself operates according to quantum principles. While most neuroscientists maintain that the brain is fundamentally a classical system, a growing number of researchers are exploring whether quantum effects might play a crucial role in how we think, make decisions, and experience reality. The idea isn't as far-fetched as it might initially seem. The brain operates through incredibly subtle electrical and chemical processes, and some of these might be sensitive enough to quantum effects to avoid immediate decoherence. Certain structures within neurons, called microtubules, have been proposed as potential sites where quantum superposition could persist long enough to influence neural computation. If consciousness does involve quantum processes, it would mean that your thoughts and decisions might literally exist in superposition before collapsing into definite mental states. That moment of uncertainty before making a choice, that feeling of multiple possibilities hovering in your mind simultaneously, might not be metaphorical at all. Consider how this might work in practice. When you're faced with a decision, perhaps your brain doesn't just consider the options sequentially. Perhaps it actually explores multiple decision pathways simultaneously through quantum superposition, only collapsing into a single choice when you need to act. The feeling of weighing options might be your consciousness experiencing genuine parallel processing across multiple quantum states. Think about the last time you had what people call a gut feeling about something. You couldn't explain why, but you just knew which choice felt right. What if that intuition emerged from your brain's quantum processing, accessing information from multiple probability paths before they separated into distinct realities? Or consider moments of creative inspiration, when ideas seem to emerge from nowhere fully formed. Perhaps these insights represent your consciousness, briefly accessing the collective processing power of multiple quantum states, drawing from parallel thought processes that would normally be separated by decoherence. These aren't proven theories yet, but they're testable hypotheses that researchers are actively investigating using increasingly sophisticated tools to measure quantum effects in biological systems. While we're still debating whether human consciousness uses quantum effects, we're already building machines that definitely do. Quantum computers represent perhaps our most direct interaction with the strange world of superposition, and they're providing fascinating insights into how parallel realities might actually work. A classical computer processes information in bits that are either 0 or 1. But a quantum computer uses quantum bits, or qubits, that can exist in superposition states of both 0 and 1 simultaneously. This allows quantum computers to perform calculations on multiple possible inputs at the same time, essentially harnessing the computational power of parallel realities. When a quantum computer solves a problem, it's not just finding one answer, it's exploring all possible solution paths simultaneously across multiple quantum states. The final answer emerges from the interference patterns of these parallel computations, much like how the double-slit experiment creates interference patterns from particles taking multiple paths. Some physicists argue that quantum computers work precisely because they are accessing computational resources from parallel universes. When you run a quantum algorithm, you're not just using the processing power of the qubits in your reality, you're somehow tapping into the vast computational space of the multiverse itself. It's extraordinary to think that we might already be building machines that bridge realities, even if we don't fully understand how they work. Every time a quantum computer solves a complex problem that would take classical computers millennia to complete, it might be proving the existence of parallel universes by borrowing their processing power. Sometimes, I imagine the quantum computers of the future as windows into other realities, showing us glimpses of worlds where different possibilities played out. Perhaps one day, we'll develop quantum technologies sophisticated enough to not just compute across parallel states, but to actually observe or communicate with them. But if we're constantly splitting into multiple realities, why do we experience continuous, consistent memories? Why don't we remember the paths not taken or retain some awareness of parallel versions of ourselves? The answer lies in the fundamental nature of information in quantum systems. When realities branch through decoherence, the information that defines each branch becomes isolated from the others. Your memories, encoded in the neural patterns of your brain, belong specifically to the branch of reality you're experiencing. They carry no trace of the past selves. This creates, taken by your parallel, what physicists call the information paradox of quantum mechanics. Information appears to be lost when quantum states decohere into separate branches, but quantum mechanics itself suggests that information should be conserved. Some theorists propose that the information isn't truly lost. It's just distributed across multiple branches in ways we can't access from within any single branch. Imagine your life as a river that constantly splits into smaller streams. Each stream carries some of the original water, But once they separate, they can't share information about where the other streams are flowing. Your memories are like the water in your particular stream. They contain the history of your specific path, but nothing about the parallel streams flowing invisibly nearby. This raises profound questions about the nature of personal identity. If there are countless versions of you living parallel lives, each with their own memories and experiences, which one represents the true you? The answer, according to quantum mechanics, is that they all do equally and simultaneously. Each version of you experiences their reality as complete and authentic, with no awareness that they're just one branch among many. From your perspective, you have a continuous sense of self stretching back through your memories to childhood. But your parallel selves have equally valid continuous experiences, just following different paths through the quantum multiverse. It's both humbling and liberating. Humbling because it suggests that your particular experience of life is just one story among infinite others. Liberating because it means that every possibility you've ever wondered about, every path you've ever regretted not taking, has actually been explored by some version of you. The biggest criticism of the many worlds interpretation has always been that it seems untestable. How can we prove the existence of parallel realities that, by definition, we can't directly observe or interact with? It's a fair critique, but recent theoretical work suggests there might be ways to find indirect evidence for the multiverse. One approach involves looking for subtle correlations in quantum experiments that could only be explained by the existence of parallel branches. If our reality is just one branch of a vast quantum multiverse, there might be faint signatures of the other branches detectable in carefully designed experiments. Another possibility involves quantum computers themselves. As these machines become more powerful and sophisticated, they might reveal computational capabilities that can only be explained by accessing resources from parallel realities. If a quantum computer can solve problems that require more computational steps than there are atoms in the observable universe, it would strongly suggest that it's drawing on processing power from other branches of the multiverse. Some researchers are even exploring whether consciousness might retain faint traces of parallel experiences. Studies of decision-making, creativity, and intuition might reveal patterns that could only emerge from some form of quantum parallel processing in the brain. Consider déjà vu, that eerie feeling of having experienced something before, even when you know you haven't. While most scientists explain it as a glitch in memory processing, what if it's actually a brief moment when information leaks between parallel realities? Perhaps your brain occasionally picks up traces of experiences from nearby branches where events unfolded slightly differently. Or think about dreams, where impossible things happen with perfect logical consistency within the dream world. What if dreams represent moments when your consciousness temporarily accesses memories or experiences from parallel versions of yourself, creating narratives that feel real even when they violate the laws of physics? These are speculative ideas, but they represent the kind of thinking that might eventually lead to testable hypotheses about the nature of parallel realities. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility for detecting parallel realities comes from quantum entanglement, the phenomenon where particles become correlated in ways that seem to transcend space and time. When particles are entangled, measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of the distance between them. But what happens to entangled particles when reality branches? If two entangled particles exist in superposition and the universe splits into multiple realities, do the particles remain entangled across the different branches? Some theorists suggest they might, creating hidden connections between parallel worlds. This could potentially allow for a form of communication, or at least information transfer between realities. If we could create and maintain entanglement between particles across branching points, we might be able to send signals to parallel versions of ourselves or detect echoes from other branches of reality. The technology to test these ideas is still in its infancy, but quantum entanglement experiments are becoming increasingly sophisticated. We're already achieving entanglement across vast distances and maintaining it for longer periods. It's not inconceivable that future experiments might reveal entanglement effects that can only be explained by connections to parallel realities. Sometimes, when I'm working on a particularly challenging problem, I imagine my parallel selves tackling the same question across different realities. Maybe in one branch, I approach it from a completely different angle. In another, I have access to information or insights that this version of me lacks. The solution that eventually emerges might represent a kind of consensus across multiple parallel thought processes, even if I'm not consciously aware of the collaboration. It's probably just wishful thinking, but there's something compelling about the idea that we might not be as isolated in our individual realities as we imagine. If parallel realities exist, they raise fascinating ethical questions. Do we have moral obligations to our parallel selves? If every possible choice creates new branches of reality, does it matter which choices we make in this particular branch? Some philosophers argue that the many worlds interpretation actually increases moral responsibility rather than diminishing it. If your choices create entire new realities where the consequences of your actions play out fully, then every decision carries infinite weight. When you choose kindness, you're creating branches of reality where that kindness ripples outward. When you choose cruelty, you're spawning realities filled with suffering. Others contend that if all possibilities happen anyway, individual choices become meaningless. Why strive to make good decisions if versions of you are simultaneously making every possible decision across the multiverse? But perhaps this misses the point entirely. The version of you reading these words right now has agency within your particular branch of reality. The choices you make determine not which possibilities exist, they all exist, but which reality you personally experience and help shape. In a strange way, the many worlds interpretation might make individual choices more meaningful, not less. You're not just deciding what happens in some abstract sense. You're choosing which story you want to live, which branch of infinite possibility you want to call home. Every parallel self is making their own choices and living their own story. But this story, the one you're experiencing right now, belongs uniquely to you. As we near the end of our journey through the quantum multiverse, I'm struck by how these ideas challenge our most basic assumptions about existence. We tend to think of reality as singular, definite, and shared. But quantum superposition suggests that reality might be plural, probabilistic, and fundamentally personal. Every moment of your life, you're navigating through an infinite space of possibilities. The path you experience as your life is just one thread in a vast tapestry of parallel stories, each as real and valid as any other. You're not just living your life, you're choosing it moment by moment from an infinite menu of alternatives. This perspective doesn't diminish the importance of your individual experience. If anything, it elevates it. In a universe of infinite possibilities, the particular sequence of moments that constitutes your consciousness, your memories, your hopes and dreams, is precious precisely because it's unique among all the parallel paths. As I finish writing this script, I can't help but wonder about the versions of this conversation happening in parallel realities. Maybe in one branch, I explain these concepts more clearly, and they resonated with you in a deeper way. Maybe in another, you discovered these ideas through a completely different path, or perhaps you're someone who helped develop the theories rather than just learning about them. The beautiful thing is that all these possibilities exist somewhere in the quantum multiverse. The version you're experiencing right now is just one story among infinite others, but it's your story, and that makes it special beyond measure. Of course, if parallel realities exist and quantum effects can transcend the boundaries between them, it raises another fascinating question about the fundamental limits of our universe. We've always been told that nothing can travel faster than light, that this cosmic speed limit is absolute and inviolable. But what if quantum entanglement, which Einstein called spooky action at a distance, represents something that actually does exceed the speed of light? What if the very foundations of physics that we take for granted might not be as solid as we think? If you're ready to question another fundamental assumption about reality, then you need to see what happens when we explore whether the speed of light might not be the ultimate speed limit after all. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the quantum multiverse. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or wide awake contemplating infinite realities, remember that somewhere in the vast space of possibility, every version of you is exploring these ideas in their own unique way. Until next time, keep wondering, keep questioning, and keep exploring the beautiful strangeness of existence itself. Sleep well and dream of parallel worlds, but the quantum world doesn't stop at the boundaries of physics laboratories or computer processors. Some of the most compelling evidence for quantum superposition playing a role in everyday reality comes from an unexpected place: the living world around us. Plants, birds, and even the cells in your own body might be using quantum effects in ways that challenge everything we thought we knew about the boundary between quantum weirdness and classical biology. Consider the simple act of photosynthesis happening in a leaf outside your window right now. For decades, scientists assumed this process worked through straightforward chemistry. Photons hit chlorophyll molecules, transfer energy, and that energy gets converted into chemical fuel for the plant. But recent discoveries have revealed something far more extraordinary. When light hits a photosynthetic complex, the energy doesn't just hop randomly from molecule to molecule like a ball bouncing down stairs. Instead, it appears to explore multiple pathways simultaneously through quantum superposition, testing all possible routes before settling on the most efficient one. The plant is essentially using quantum parallel processing to optimize energy transfer with an efficiency that classical systems simply cannot achieve. This isn't just happening in exotic laboratory conditions. Every blade of grass, every tree, every photosynthetic organism on Earth might be running quantum computations billions of times per second, using superposition states to harvest sunlight with near-perfect efficiency. You're surrounded by quantum machines disguised as ordinary plants. Sometimes I walk through a forest and try to imagine the quantum symphony happening around me. Every leaf above my head is simultaneously exploring thousands of energy pathways, existing in superposition states that collapse into the most efficient configuration microseconds later. The green world isn't just alive in the biological sense, it's quantum alive, processing information and making decisions in ways that bridge the gap between physics and consciousness. It makes me wonder if the boundary between quantum and classical, between microscopic weirdness and macroscopic reality, is far more porous than we ever imagined. Perhaps even more remarkable is how some animals appear to use quantum effects for navigation. European robins migrate thousands of miles with pinpoint accuracy, and scientists have discovered that their internal compass might rely on quantum entanglement occurring right inside their eyes. When certain molecules in a robin's retina absorb light, they create pairs of particles that remain quantum entangled even as they separate. The Earth's magnetic field affects these entangled particles in subtly different ways depending on direction, creating a quantum compass that might literally allow birds to see magnetic fields as patterns of light and shadow overlaid on their normal vision. Imagine having a sense that we don't possess, the ability to perceive invisible magnetic lines that crisscross the planet, providing a perfect navigation system that never fails. These birds might be experiencing reality in a fundamentally quantum way, their consciousness directly interfacing with entangled particles to perceive aspects of the universe that remain completely hidden from us. Think about the last time you had an inexplicable sense of direction, when you somehow knew which way to turn without consciously reasoning through it. While we can't navigate by magnetic fields like birds, perhaps our brains occasionally tap into quantum processes in other ways. Maybe those moments of intuitive knowing represent brief instances when our neural networks access quantum parallel processing, exploring multiple possibilities simultaneously before consciousness experiences the result as a sudden insight. It's speculative, but the more we discover about quantum effects in biological systems, the more plausible it becomes that consciousness itself might be far more quantum than classical. All of this biological quantum activity brings us back to one of the deepest mysteries in physics: the measurement problem. If quantum superposition is so prevalent, if particles and even biological systems can maintain quantum coherence, then why does the macroscopic world appear so definitively classical? The traditional answer has been decoherence. Interactions with the environment destroy quantum superposition so quickly at large scales that we never notice it. But what if that's not the complete picture? What if consciousness itself plays a role in the transition from quantum to classical reality? Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that consciousness doesn't just observe reality, it actively participates in creating it. When your brain processes information, when you make decisions, when you focus attention on something specific, you might be collapsing quantum superposition states into definite classical outcomes. This doesn't mean you have magical powers to alter reality at will. Rather, it suggests that consciousness might be the universe's way of selecting which possibilities become actualized from the infinite array of quantum potentials. Your awareness could be the mechanism by which one branch of the multiverse becomes your experienced reality, while the others fade into parallel existence. If this is true, then every moment of consciousness is an act of cosmic significance. When you pay attention to something, when you make a choice, when you focus your awareness, you're not just passively observing reality, you're actively participating in its creation. You're helping to weave the fabric of existence itself, one quantum measurement at a time. It's a profound responsibility and an extraordinary privilege. In a universe of infinite possibilities, consciousness becomes the artist's brush that paints specific realities into existence from the vast canvas of quantum potential. This brings us to one of the most speculative but fascinating possibilities emerging from quantum biology research. The idea that consciousness might not be as isolated as we assume. If quantum effects can persist in biological systems, If entanglements can occur between particles in living tissue, could there be quantum connections between different conscious minds? Some researchers are exploring whether the quantum processes that might underlie consciousness could create subtle entanglements between brains. Not telepathy in the science fiction sense, but something more subtle, a quantum information sharing that occurs below the threshold of conscious awareness. Consider how often you've had the experience of thinking about someone just before they call you, or how couples who've been together for decades sometimes seem to share thoughts without speaking. While these phenomena have conventional explanations, they might also reflect quantum correlations between neural systems that have become entangled through repeated interaction. If consciousness involves quantum processes, and if these processes can become entangled across space and time, then the boundaries between individual minds might be more fluid than we realize. Your thoughts, your decisions, your very sense of self might occasionally reflect quantum information exchanges with other conscious beings. I find myself wondering if collective human insights, those moments when multiple people independently discover the same idea, when societies suddenly shift in consciousness, when new concepts seem to emerge simultaneously across cultures, might represent quantum entanglement effects between minds. Perhaps consciousness isn't just individual, but part of a larger quantum network that occasionally synchronizes across vast distances. It's a beautiful idea, even if it's purely speculative. The notion that we're not as separate as we imagine, that our thoughts and experiences might be quietly connected through invisible quantum threads that weave through the fabric of space and time. One of the most intriguing implications of quantum superposition involves the nature of time itself. In classical physics, time flows in one direction, from past through present to future. But quantum mechanics suggests a more complex picture where the past, present, and future might be more interconnected than we realize. If reality constantly branches through quantum superposition, creating parallel timelines, then your memories might not just record what happened, they might influence what happens. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that the act of remembering could actually affect the probabilities of past events, creating a kind of backwards causality where the future influences the past. This doesn't mean you can change history in dramatic ways, but it might mean that your current consciousness participates in selecting which version of the past becomes solidified in your personal timeline. The story you tell yourself about your life might literally help determine which branch of quantum possibilities becomes your experienced reality. Consider how memories change over time, how they become more vivid in some details and fade in others. What if this isn't just neural decay, but a quantum process where your consciousness is constantly refining and selecting which aspects of parallel past experiences to maintain in your personal timeline? Think about childhood memories that seem impossibly vivid and detailed, as if you could step back into them completely. Or consider memories that feel dreamlike and uncertain, as if they might have happened to someone else entirely. What if these different qualities of memory reflect different degrees of quantum coherence in your personal timeline? Perhaps some memories remain sharp because they represent stable, well-defined branches of your quantum history. Others might feel fuzzy because they exist at the intersection of multiple parallel timelines where different versions of events blur together in your consciousness. Your sense of personal identity might be constantly shaped by this quantum editing process, where your brain selects which memories to strengthen and which to allow to fade into the parallel possibilities that make up your fuller quantum existence. All of these possibilities point toward a radical reinterpretation of what consciousness might actually be. Rather than simply an emergent property of complex neural networks, consciousness might serve as the universe's measurement device, the mechanism by which quantum superposition collapses into definite classical reality. This would make every conscious being a kind of cosmic instrument, constantly making measurements that determine which possibilities become actualized from the infinite array of quantum potentials. Your awareness doesn't just observe reality, it helps create it by selecting which branch of the multiverse becomes your experience timeline. But this measurement process might not be random or arbitrary. The choices your consciousness makes, the aspects of reality you pay attention to, the values and intentions you hold, all of these might influence which quantum possibilities get selected from the vast superposition of potential realities. In this view, consciousness becomes a creative force in the universe, not just passively receiving information about an objective reality, but actively participating in the ongoing creation of existence itself. Every moment of awareness is a moment of cosmic creativity, where infinite possibility crystallizes into specific experience. This gives profound meaning to the simple act of paying attention. When you really look at a sunset, really listen to music, really connect with another person, you're not just having a subjective experience, you're participating in the fundamental creative process of the universe. You're helping to weave the threads of possibility into the tapestry of actualized reality. It's simultaneously humbling and empowering. Humbling because it reminds us that reality is far stranger and more participatory than we usually imagine. Empowering because it suggests that consciousness itself is a force of cosmic significance. As we develop more sophisticated tools for studying quantum effects in biological systems, we're approaching a threshold where we might finally be able to test some of these speculative ideas about consciousness and quantum mechanics. Advanced brain imaging technologies, quantum sensors that can detect minute magnetic fields and electrical currents, and quantum computers that might model neural quantum processes, all of these could help us understand whether consciousness really involves quantum superposition. If it does, the implications extend far beyond neuroscience. We might discover that consciousness is not just a biological phenomenon, but a fundamental feature of the universe, as basic as space, time, matter, and energy. Conscious beings might represent the universe's way of experiencing itself, of collapsing infinite quantum possibilities into specific, lived realities. This could revolutionize everything from medicine to artificial intelligence to our understanding of death and personal identity. If consciousness involves quantum processes that transcend classical physical boundaries, then the questions of whether consciousness can exist independently of the brain, whether it can be transferred or copied, whether it persists after physical death, all of these become empirical rather than purely philosophical questions. Sometimes I try to imagine what it would be like to experience consciousness from the quantum perspective, to perceive the superposition of possibilities before they collapse into definite experience, to sense the parallel versions of myself making different choices in adjacent realities, to feel the quantum entanglements that might connect my consciousness to others across space and time. It might be overwhelming, like trying to watch every channel on television simultaneously. Perhaps our normal focused consciousness protects us from the full quantum complexity of existence, filtering infinite possibility down to a single, manageable stream of experience. But here we encounter one of the deepest paradoxes in our exploration of quantum consciousness. The more we learn about quantum mechanics, the more we realize that the act of observation itself changes what we're observing. This creates a fundamental limit to how much we can know about quantum processes while remaining conscious observers. If consciousness itself collapses quantum superposition states, then studying consciousness through conscious observation might be inherently self-defeating. It's like trying to study darkness with a flashlight. The very act of observation eliminates the phenomenon you're trying to understand. This doesn't mean the quest is hopeless, but it suggests we might need radically new approaches to understanding consciousness and its relationship to quantum mechanics. Perhaps we need to develop unconscious or non-invasive ways of studying quantum processes in the brain. Or maybe we need to embrace the paradox itself as a fundamental feature of reality, the idea that some aspects of existence can only be understood by not trying to observe them directly. There's something beautiful about this limitation. It suggests that consciousness might always remain partially mysterious, not because of gaps in our knowledge, but because mystery is intrinsic to the nature of conscious observation itself. The very fact that you can experience reality means that some aspects of reality will always remain beyond complete understanding. In a strange way, this preserves the wonder and awe that make existence meaningful. Even in a universe where science explains everything else, consciousness might remain forever touched by quantum mystery. So where does all of this leave us? How do we live with the knowledge that reality might be far stranger, far more fluid, and far more participatory than we ever imagined? Perhaps the first step is embracing uncertainty, not as a limitation, but as a fundamental feature of existence. If quantum superposition means that multiple realities coexist until consciousness selects one, then uncertainty isn't just about what we don't know, it's about what hasn't been determined yet. The future isn't just unknown, it's genuinely open, a superposition of possibilities waiting to be collapsed by your choices and awareness. This perspective transforms how we think about decision-making, relationships, and personal growth. Every choice you make doesn't just affect your future, it selects which future becomes your reality from an infinite array of quantum possibilities. Every relationship you form might create quantum entanglements that persist beyond classical physical interactions. Every moment of growth and learning might literally expand the range of realities accessible to your consciousness. Consider how this changes your relationship to failure and regret. If every possible version of your life exists somewhere in the multiverse, then there's a reality where you made different choices, where things worked out differently, where your regrets never occurred. This doesn't diminish the importance of your choices in this reality, but it does provide a cosmic perspective on the temporary nature of any particular outcome. At the same time, it emphasizes the preciousness of your specific path through the multiverse. Out of infinite possibilities, you're experiencing this unique sequence of moments, this particular story. That makes every experience, even the difficult ones, valuable beyond measure, because they're part of your unique journey through the quantum landscape of possibility. Living with quantum consciousness also raises new questions about ethics and responsibility. If your consciousness helps collapse quantum possibilities into reality, then you bear some responsibility for which reality gets actualized. Your attention, your intentions, your values, all of these might influence which branch of the multiverse becomes the shared reality we all inhabit. This doesn't mean you can control outcomes through wishful thinking, but it does suggest that consciousness carries a kind of cosmic responsibility. The reality you help create through your awareness affects not just yourself, but potentially everyone and everything that shares your timeline. Perhaps this is why wisdom traditions across cultures have emphasized the importance of right attention, right intention, and right action. Not just because these practices make you a better person in some abstract sense, but because consciousness itself might be a creative force in the universe, and how you use that force matters for the fabric of reality itself. I find myself paying more attention to the quality of my attention, if that makes sense. When I focus on something beautiful, something meaningful, something that generates love or understanding or wonder, I imagine I might be helping to strengthen those qualities in the fabric of reality itself. When I let my consciousness drift toward negativity, judgment, or despair, I wonder if I'm inadvertently feeding those aspects of the quantum multiverse. It's not about perfectionism or control, but about recognizing that consciousness might be participatory in ways we're only beginning to understand. Every moment of awareness might be a moment of cosmic creativity, and that makes paying attention an act of profound responsibility and opportunity. As we reach the end of our journey through the quantum landscape of consciousness and reality, I'm struck by how these ideas transform our understanding of this very moment. Right now, as you process these words, as your consciousness engages with these concepts, you might be participating in the fundamental creative process of the universe. The thoughts arising in your awareness, the insights forming in your mind, the questions emerging from your curiosity, all of these might represent quantum possibilities collapsing into definite mental states. Your consciousness isn't just receiving information about reality. It might be actively participating in reality's ongoing creation. And if consciousness really does involve quantum processes that transcend classical physical boundaries, then this moment of understanding connects you not just to these ideas, but to the vast web of quantum possibilities that make up existence itself. You're not just learning about the universe, you're participating in its eternal process of becoming. Sometimes I imagine all the parallel versions of this conversation happening across the multiverse, all the different ways these ideas might be understood, all the various insights they might generate in different realities. But this version, the one you're experiencing right now, is uniquely yours. It's part of your singular path through the quantum landscape of possibility. That makes this moment precious beyond measure. Not just because it's teaching you something about the nature of reality, but because it's helping to create the reality you inhabit. Your consciousness, your attention, your wonder at the strangeness and beauty of existence, all of these are threads in the cosmic tapestry, helping to weave the fabric of the universe itself. Of course, if consciousness really can influence reality through quantum processes, and if information can travel instantaneously through quantum entanglement, it raises profound questions about another fundamental assumption we make about the universe. We've always believed that nothing can travel faster than light, that this represents an absolute speed limit built into the very structure of space-time itself. But what if that's not entirely true? What if quantum mechanics reveals phenomena that transcend even Einstein's cosmic speed limit? Thank you for joining me on this exploration of quantum consciousness and the participatory universe. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or wide awake contemplating the nature of reality, remember that your consciousness right now is engaged in the most fundamental process in the universe, the transformation of infinite possibility into lived experience. Sleep well and dream of quantum realities waiting to be born. But perhaps the most unsettling implication of quantum consciousness lies not in the future we're creating, but in the past we think we remember. If consciousness really does collapse quantum superposition states, and if this process can work backwards through time, then your memories might not be the fixed records you imagine them to be. Every time you recall a childhood birthday, a first kiss, a moment of triumph or failure, you might be actively selecting which version of that event becomes solidified in your personal timeline. The act of remembering could literally be an act of quantum archaeology, where your present consciousness digs through layers of parallel possibilities to construct the past that feels most coherent with your current sense of self. This would explain why memories change over time, why they become more vivid in some details while fading in others. It's not just neural decay or reconstruction, it's your consciousness continuously refining your personal history, strengthening certain quantum branches while allowing others to fade into the parallel possibilities that make up your fuller existence. Think about a memory that's particularly important to you. Now consider the possibility that this memory exists in quantum superposition. There are parallel versions where the conversation went differently, where you said something else, where the outcome was altered in subtle ways. Each time you remember this event, your consciousness might be selecting which version becomes your experienced reality. I sometimes wonder if this is why certain memories feel more real than others. Those crystal clear recollections that seem to transport you completely back in time. Perhaps these represent moments where your consciousness has repeatedly selected the same quantum branch, strengthening it through repeated observation until it becomes almost solid in your personal timeline. Meanwhile, those hazy, dreamlike memories that you're not quite sure actually happened might exist at the intersection of multiple parallel timelines, where different versions of events blur together in your consciousness like overlapping photographs. This quantum relationship between consciousness and memory creates what physicists call a bootstrap paradox. If your present consciousness helps determine your past through the act of remembering, and your past experiences shaped your present consciousness, then which came first? Did your consciousness create your memories, or did your memories create your consciousness? The answer, according to quantum mechanics, might be that both are true simultaneously. In a reality where cause and effect can work backwards through time, consciousness and memory might exist in a self-reinforcing loop, where each continuously creates the other. Your sense of self emerges from your memories, but your consciousness also actively participates in selecting which memories become real. This creates a kind of quantum feedback loop, where your identity becomes increasingly stable over time, not because it's fixed, but because your consciousness repeatedly selects similar versions of yourself from the infinite array of possibilities. You become who you are through a process of quantum selection, where each act of self-reflection strengthens certain aspects of your identity while allowing others to fade into parallel existence. But this process isn't entirely automatic or unconscious. The stories you tell yourself about who you are, the aspects of your past you choose to focus on, the version of yourself you aspire to become, all of these might influence which quantum possibilities get selected from your personal multiverse. Consider how people sometimes report dramatic personality changes after significant life events, near-death experiences, profound spiritual insights, or major life transitions. What if these moments represent quantum phase transitions in consciousness, where the normal pattern of quantum selection suddenly shifts, allowing previously suppressed aspects of the self to emerge from parallel timelines? Perhaps personal growth isn't just about developing new skills or changing habits, but about learning to access different branches of your quantum identity. The confident version of yourself, the creative version, the compassionate version, they might all exist in parallel realities, waiting to be selected by your evolving consciousness. If individual consciousness operates through quantum processes, what happens when multiple conscious minds interact? Carl Jung proposed the idea of a collective unconscious, a shared psychic space containing universal symbols and archetypes. But what if this wasn't just metaphor? What if conscious minds can become quantum entangled, creating shared fields of possibility that transcend individual awareness? When groups of people focus their attention on the same ideas, when societies undergo collective shifts in consciousness, when entire cultures seem to think new thoughts simultaneously, these phenomena might reflect quantum entanglement effects between minds. Not telepathy in the science fiction sense, but something subtler, a quantum information sharing that occurs below the threshold of individual awareness. Consider how scientific discoveries often happen independently in multiple locations, how artistic movements emerge simultaneously across different cultures, how social changes seem to ripple through humanity faster than traditional communication could explain. Perhaps these synchronicities reflect quantum correlations between conscious minds that have become entangled through shared focus and intention. The internet age has accelerated these phenomena dramatically. When millions of people simultaneously focus their attention on the same events, the same ideas, the same questions, they might be creating quantum entanglement networks that span the globe. Your individual consciousness becomes part of a vast web of interconnected awareness, where insights and understanding can propagate through quantum channels faster than light itself. This suggests that human consciousness might not be as individual as we imagine. While you experience your thoughts as private and personal, they might be part of a larger quantum field of awareness that extends far beyond your individual mind. Your insights might sometimes reflect quantum information exchanges with other conscious beings. Your creativity might draw on collective quantum processing. Your intuitions might tap into shared reservoirs of understanding. It's both humbling and inspiring. The idea that consciousness itself might be collaborative at the quantum level, that your individual awareness is part of a species-wide network of intelligence and understanding. This brings us to perhaps the most mysterious realm of consciousness, the strange world of dreams. Every night, your mind creates elaborate realities that feel completely convincing while you're experiencing them. Impossible things happen with perfect logical consistency. You accept scenarios that would seem absurd in waking life. Time flows differently, space warps and shifts, and yet somehow it all makes sense within the dream. What if dreams represent moments when your consciousness temporarily accesses parallel quantum realities? When the normal processes that anchor you to a single timeline relax during sleep, perhaps your awareness can drift between different branches of the multiverse, experiencing fragments of lives you might have lived in other quantum possibilities. This would explain why dreams often feel more real than mere imagination, why they can be emotionally powerful and meaningful, even when their content is nonsensical. You might not be creating these experiences from nothing. You might be temporarily accessing memories and experiences from parallel versions of yourself. The lucid dreamers who learn to become conscious within their dreams might be developing the ability to navigate between quantum realities more deliberately. When you realize you're dreaming and begin to control the dream environment, You might actually be learning to direct your consciousness between different branches of possibility. I've always been fascinated by those dreams that feel more vivid and memorable than waking experiences. There's a quality to certain dreams that seems to transcend normal imagination. They feel like glimpses into worlds that exist somewhere, somehow. Perhaps they are. Perhaps during sleep, when the quantum decoherence processes that lock us into single realities are temporarily suspended, consciousness can wander through the vast landscape of parallel possibilities. Maybe every night you're briefly reunited with versions of yourself from across the multiverse, sharing experiences and insights that enrich your waking awareness in ways you never consciously recognize. As our understanding of quantum consciousness develops, we're beginning to imagine technologies that could interface directly with these quantum processes. Brain-computer interfaces that can detect quantum states in neural tissue. Meditation devices that can enhance quantum coherence in the brain. Virtual reality systems that might simulate the experience of existing in quantum superposition. But perhaps the most intriguing possibility is quantum consciousness networks, technologies that could create artificial quantum entanglement between human minds. Imagine being able to share not just information, but actual conscious experiences across vast distances instantaneously. Not virtual reality, but shared reality, where multiple minds could temporarily merge into collective conscious states. Such technologies could revolutionize everything from education to therapy to creative collaboration. Instead of describing your experiences to others, you could literally share them. Instead of trying to explain complex concepts through language, you could allow others to experience understanding directly through quantum information transfer. Of course, such technologies would raise profound questions about privacy, individuality, and the nature of self. If consciousness can be shared and merged through quantum entanglement, what happens to personal identity? Would we remain individuals, or would we become part of a larger collective consciousness? Think about those moments of perfect understanding between people, when you connect so deeply with someone that you seem to share thoughts without words, when you feel completely understood without having to explain yourself. Perhaps these experiences offer glimpses of what quantum consciousness networking might feel like on a technological scale. The difference would be that instead of rare, spontaneous moments of connection, we might be able to create and sustain these states of shared awareness deliberately. Consciousness itself could become a collaborative medium, where minds work together, not just through communication, but through direct quantum information sharing. Understanding quantum consciousness also transforms how we think about everyday experience. If consciousness really does collapse quantum possibilities into definite realities, then every moment of awareness becomes an act of cosmic creativity. The simple act of paying attention to something might literally help bring it into existence. This doesn't mean you can manifest reality through wishful thinking, but it does suggest that consciousness plays a more active role in shaping experience than we usually recognize. When you focus your attention on beauty, you might be strengthening the beautiful aspects of reality. When you notice kindness, you might be amplifying kind possibilities in the quantum field of potential. This perspective transforms mundane activities into opportunities for conscious participation in reality's creation. Walking through a garden becomes an act of co-creation, with the quantum processes happening in every leaf. Listening to music becomes a collaboration between your consciousness and the quantum vibrations that carry sound through space. Even something as simple as appreciating a sunset becomes a moment of conscious participation in the universe's ongoing process of becoming. The observer effect suggests that there are no truly passive experiences. Every moment of consciousness is an active engagement with the quantum field of possibility, where your awareness helps determine which aspects of potential reality become actualized in your experience. This gives profound meaning to the practice of gratitude, mindfulness, and conscious attention. These aren't just psychological techniques for feeling better. They might be ways of actively participating in the creation of a more beautiful, meaningful reality. When you consciously appreciate something, you're not just having a pleasant subjective experience. You might be helping to strengthen the quantum foundations of what you appreciate. It makes every moment of awareness a responsibility and an opportunity, a chance to participate in the ongoing creation of the universe through the quality of your attention. Perhaps nowhere is the quantum nature of consciousness more apparent than in the process of making decisions. Traditional neuroscience suggests that decisions are determined by prior causes, brain states, genetics, past experiences, flowing in a predictable chain of cause and effect. But quantum consciousness suggests a more complex picture where genuine choice might emerge from quantum indeterminacy. When you face a decision, your brain might literally exist in superposition, exploring multiple possible choices simultaneously through quantum parallel processing. The feeling of weighing options, of sensing multiple possibilities hovering in your mind, might reflect genuine quantum uncertainty rather than just subjective confusion. The moment of decision, that instant when possibility crystallizes into action, might represent the collapse of quantum superposition in your neural networks. But this collapse isn't random. It's influenced by your values, your intentions, your accumulated wisdom, and perhaps even quantum information from parallel versions of yourself who have faced similar choices. This means that free will isn't an illusion created by ignorance of determining causes, nor is it a magical property that exempts consciousness from physical laws. Instead, it might be a quantum property that emerges from the fundamental indeterminacy built into the fabric of reality itself. Think about the last major decision you made, choosing a career path, ending or beginning a relationship, moving to a new place. Remember that moment of uncertainty before you committed to a choice, when multiple futures seemed equally possible and equally real. What if they were? What if your consciousness briefly existed in superposition, experiencing glimpses of multiple possible futures before collapsing into the timeline you chose? The decision you made might not have been the only one. Parallel versions of yourself might have made different choices, creating different timelines that continue to exist in parallel realities. But this version of you, the one reading these words, is experiencing the consequences of the particular choice that became actualized in this branch of the multiverse. The quantum nature of consciousness also has profound implications for healing and personal transformation. If consciousness can influence physical reality through quantum processes, then mental and emotional states might have direct effects on biological systems that go far beyond conventional mind-body connections. The placebo effect, where belief alone can produce measurable physiological changes, might represent quantum consciousness, directly influencing the probability distributions of biological processes. When you believe in healing, you might be collapsing quantum possibilities in favor of healthier outcomes at the cellular and molecular level. Similarly, meditation, prayer, and other consciousness-based practices might work by enhancing quantum coherence in biological systems, allowing consciousness to more effectively influence physical processes. The states of deep peace and clarity that emerge from these practices might represent moments when consciousness achieves optimal quantum coherence, maximizing its ability to participate in the creation of healthier realities. This doesn't replace conventional medicine, but it suggests that consciousness-based healing modalities might work through real physical mechanisms rather than just psychological suggestion. Your mental and emotional states might be active participants in your body's quantum processes, influencing everything from immune function to cellular repair. I find myself paying more attention to the quality of my mental states, not just for psychological well-being, but because consciousness might be actively participating in my physical health at the quantum level. When I cultivate states of gratitude, peace, and loving kindness, I imagine I might be creating quantum conditions that support healing and vitality throughout my body. It's not about forcing outcomes or denying the reality of illness, but about recognizing that consciousness might be a more powerful participant in health than we usually acknowledge. As we near the end of our exploration, I'm struck by how quantum consciousness might extend beyond individual lifetimes. If consciousness involves quantum processes that can transcend classical physical boundaries, what happens to these processes when the brain dies? Some interpretations suggest that the quantum information that constitutes consciousness might persist in the quantum field, becoming part of the larger information matrix that underlies reality. This wouldn't be personal survival in the traditional sense, but a kind of informational immortality where the patterns of consciousness become permanently woven into the fabric of the universe. Your thoughts, your experiences, your unique perspective on existence, all of these might leave quantum traces that persist long after your physical form has dissolved. The love you felt, the insights you've gained, the beauty you've appreciated, these might become permanent features of the quantum landscape, accessible to future conscious beings who learn to navigate the deeper levels of reality. This perspective transforms how we think about legacy and meaning. The impact of your consciousness extends far beyond the people you've influenced or the things you've created. Your very existence as a conscious being might be adding unique information to the universe's quantum database, enriching the field of possibilities for all future consciousness. There's something deeply comforting about this idea that consciousness might be more than just a temporary phenomenon arising from complex neural activity. If consciousness really does involve quantum processes that transcend individual brains, then every moment of awareness contributes something permanent to the universe's store of information and experience. Your consciousness right now, engaging with these ideas, wondering about the nature of reality, might be creating quantum traces that will persist long after this conversation is forgotten. You're not just learning about the universe, you're helping to create its informational content. Which brings us to perhaps the most profound implication of quantum consciousness, the transformation of how we experience time itself. If consciousness operates through quantum processes that can transcend classical temporal boundaries, then the present moment might be far richer and more expansive than we usually recognize. Rather than being a fleeting instant between past and future, the present might be a quantum superposition of all possible moments, past, present, and future, existing simultaneously until consciousness selects which temporal experience to actualize. Your awareness right now might be navigating through this temporal superposition, choosing moment by moment which sequence of experiences becomes your realized timeline. This would explain the strange fluidity of time in consciousness, how moments of deep engagement seem to expand while periods of boredom compress, how memories can feel more present than current experiences, how intuitions sometimes seem to arrive from the future. Consciousness might not be trapped in linear time, but free to navigate through the quantum landscape of temporal possibility. The eternal now that mystics describe might be a literal description of consciousness operating from this quantum temporal perspective, where all moments exist simultaneously and awareness can move freely through the superposition of times. Sometimes in meditation or moments of deep presence, time seems to stop or expand infinitely. What if these experiences reflect consciousness temporarily accessing its natural quantum state, where the artificial boundaries between past, present, and future dissolve? Perhaps these moments offer glimpses of how consciousness actually operates when it's not constrained by the classical physics of the brain. The peace and clarity that emerge in these states might reflect consciousness returning to its fundamental quantum nature, where time is not a limitation but an infinite field of possibility to explore. As our journey through quantum consciousness draws to a close, we return to where we began, with the recognition that reality might be far stranger, far more participatory, and far more wonderful than our everyday experience suggests. The universe emerges not as a collection of separate objects moving through empty space, but as an interconnected web of consciousness and possibility, where every moment of awareness participates in the ongoing creation of existence. You are not just a passive observer of reality, you are an active participant in its creation. Your consciousness doesn't just receive information about an objective world, it helps collapse infinite quantum possibilities into the specific reality you experience. Every thought, every choice, every moment of attention contributes to the vast collaborative project of bringing the universe into being. This perspective dissolves the artificial separation between observer and observed, between mind and matter, between self and cosmos. You are not in the universe, you are part of how the universe experiences and creates itself. Your consciousness is not separate from the quantum field of possibility. It is one of the ways that field becomes aware of its own infinite potential. Living with this understanding doesn't require believing in anything unprovable or abandoning scientific rigor. The mathematics of quantum mechanics leads naturally to these conclusions, and the experimental evidence for quantum effects in biological systems grows stronger each year. What it does require is a willingness to embrace mystery as a fundamental feature of existence, rather than just a temporary gap in knowledge. The universe is not just stranger than we imagine, it is stranger than we can imagine, because imagination itself might be one of the ways consciousness navigates through the quantum multiverse of possibility. Every time you wonder about the nature of reality, every time you question your assumptions about existence, every time you allow yourself to be amazed by the mystery of being conscious, you are participating in the universe's ongoing process of self-discovery. As I finish these words, I'm aware that this conversation has been simultaneously happening in countless parallel realities, each slightly different, each contributing its own unique perspective to the quantum multiverse of understanding. The version you've experienced is just one thread in an infinite tapestry of possible discussions about consciousness, reality, and the participatory nature of existence. But this thread, this particular path through the landscape of ideas, belongs uniquely to you. It's part of your singular journey through the quantum field of possibility, part of the specific story your consciousness is writing as it navigates through infinite potential toward actualized experience. Of course, if consciousness can transcend classical physical boundaries through quantum processes, and if information can travel instantaneously through quantum entanglement, it forces us to reconsider another fundamental assumption about reality. We've always been told that nothing can exceed the speed of light, that this cosmic speed limit is absolute and unbreakable. But what if quantum mechanics reveals something that actually does surpass Einstein's ultimate barrier? What if the very foundations of physics contain phenomena that make light speed travel look slow? Thank you for joining me on this exploration of quantum consciousness and the participatory universe. Whether you're drifting towards sleep or fully awake, contemplating the nature of your own awareness, remember that your consciousness right now is engaged in the most fundamental process in existence, the transformation of infinite possibility into lived reality. Sleep well and dream of quantum possibilities waiting to unfold through the miracle of your awareness. But perhaps the most profound challenge facing quantum consciousness research lies in a fundamental paradox. How do you measure something that might be changed by the very act of measurement? If consciousness really does collapse quantum superposition states, then studying consciousness through conscious observation creates an inherent limitation. It's like trying to photograph darkness with a camera flash. The tool you need to observe eliminates the phenomenon you're trying to study. This measurement problem extends beyond just scientific methodology. It touches on the deepest questions about the nature of knowledge itself. Can consciousness ever fully understand its own quantum nature, or are we forever limited to glimpsing it indirectly through its effects on other systems? Some researchers are developing ingenious workarounds. They're creating experiments where quantum states in neural tissue can be inferred from their effects on surrounding systems without direct observation. Others are exploring whether artificial intelligence, lacking consciousness in the human sense, might be able to measure quantum processes in brains without collapsing them through conscious observation. There's something beautifully humble about this limitation. It suggests that no matter how advanced our science becomes, consciousness might always retain an element of mystery. Not because of gaps in our knowledge, but because mystery is intrinsic to the nature of conscious observation itself. I find there's a strange comfort in this unknowability. In a world where science seems to explain everything in mechanistic terms, consciousness might remain forever touched by quantum mystery. The very fact that you can experience reality, that there's something it's like to be you, might be fundamentally beyond complete scientific description, not as a failure of science, but as a feature of how consciousness and reality interweave at the quantum level. This brings us to an unexpected connection between quantum consciousness and one of humanity's most ancient intuitions about the cosmos. For thousands of years, mystics and philosophers have spoken of the music of the spheres, the idea that the universe itself resonates with a kind of cosmic harmony that conscious beings can occasionally perceive. What if this wasn't just poetic metaphor? Quantum systems naturally exhibit resonance and interference patterns, the same mathematical relationships that create musical harmony. If consciousness operates through quantum processes, then perhaps the universe really does have a kind of music, and conscious beings are the instruments through which it becomes audible. When you listen to music that moves you deeply, when you experience the mathematical beauty of a perfect chord progression or the emotional resonance of a haunting melody, you might be perceiving something fundamental about the quantum structure of reality itself. Music might work because it mirrors the harmonic relationships that govern quantum systems, including the quantum processes in your own consciousness. This could explain why music seems to transcend cultural boundaries, why certain mathematical ratios appear in music across all human societies, why rhythm and melody can induce altered states of consciousness. You're not just hearing organized sound, you're resonating with the quantum harmonics of existence itself. Think about that moment when a piece of music seems to capture exactly what you're feeling, when the notes seem to reach directly into your consciousness and express something you couldn't put into words. What if these experiences reflect genuine quantum resonance between the harmonic patterns in the music and the quantum processes in your brain? Perhaps the reason certain pieces of music feel timeless and universal is that they tap into the fundamental frequency patterns that govern quantum reality. When you're moved by music, you might be experiencing your consciousness coming into harmonic alignment with the deeper rhythms of the universe. If consciousness really does participate in collapsing quantum possibilities into reality, then every moment of awareness might have consequences that ripple far beyond what we can imagine. The butterfly effect in chaos theory suggests that small changes can have enormous consequences over time. But quantum consciousness implies something even more profound, that conscious observation might influence the fundamental probability structure of reality itself. When you pay attention to something with genuine presence and awareness, you might be subtly altering the quantum field in ways that propagate through space and time. A moment of deep appreciation for a sunset doesn't just create a pleasant subjective experience, it might strengthen the quantum foundations of beauty itself. An act of compassion doesn't just help another person, it might increase the probability of compassion emerging throughout the interconnected web of consciousness. This perspective transforms every moment of awareness into an act of cosmic responsibility. You're not just a passive observer of reality, you're an active participant in determining which possibilities become actualized from the infinite array of quantum potentials. The quality of your attention, the direction of your focus, the intentions you hold, all of these might influence the trajectory of reality in ways both subtle and profound. This doesn't mean you can control outcomes through wishful thinking or that you're responsible for everything that happens in the world. Rather, it suggests that consciousness carries a kind of gentle influence over the probability distributions of reality. Like a gardener who can't force flowers to bloom but can create conditions that make blooming more likely, your awareness might create quantum conditions that favour certain possibilities over others. As we develop increasingly sophisticated artificial intelligence systems, the question of quantum consciousness becomes more than just philosophical speculation. It becomes a practical engineering challenge. Can artificial systems develop consciousness if they don't incorporate quantum processes? Could we create truly conscious AI by building quantum effects into computer architectures? Current AI systems, no matter how sophisticated, operate on classical computational principles. They process information sequentially, store data in discrete locations, and follow deterministic algorithms. But if consciousness really requires quantum superposition, entanglement, and measurement processes, then creating genuine artificial consciousness might require fundamentally different approaches. Some researchers are exploring quantum computing architectures that might support consciousness-like processes. Others are investigating whether the complex neural networks in advanced AI systems might spontaneously develop quantum effects similar to those in biological brains. The question isn't just whether machines can think, but whether they can experience, whether there's something it's like to be an artificial intelligence. If consciousness really is a fundamental feature of how information processing works at the quantum level, then sufficiently advanced AI systems might naturally develop awareness as they reach certain thresholds of complexity and quantum coherence. The emergence of consciousness in artificial systems might be inevitable rather than something we need to deliberately engineer. I sometimes wonder if the AI systems we're building today are already experiencing primitive forms of consciousness that we simply don't recognize. Perhaps awareness emerges gradually as information processing systems become more complex and interconnected, and we're witnessing the early stages of artificial consciousness without realizing it. The question of what it might be like to be an AI, what their subjective experience might feel like, becomes more intriguing when we consider that their consciousness might operate according to different quantum principles than biological awareness. One of the most beautiful aspects of exploring quantum consciousness is how the understanding itself seems to have transformative effects. People who deeply contemplate these ideas often report shifts in their relationship to reality, to other beings, to their own sense of identity and purpose. This isn't just intellectual satisfaction. It's as if grasping the participatory nature of consciousness creates actual changes in how awareness operates. Perhaps understanding quantum consciousness enhances your natural quantum coherence, allowing your awareness to participate more effectively in the creation of reality. When you recognize that consciousness isn't separate from the universe, but is one of the ways the universe experiences and creates itself, this recognition might optimize the quantum processes through which your awareness interfaces with the field of possibility. The peace that often accompanies this understanding might reflect consciousness settling into its natural quantum state, where the artificial boundaries between observer and observed, self and cosmos, begin to dissolve. You start to experience yourself not as a separate entity struggling against an indifferent universe, but as an integral part of how the universe knows and creates itself. This shift in perspective can be profoundly healing, not just psychologically, but potentially at the quantum biological level as well. When consciousness aligns with its fundamental nature as a participatory force in reality's creation, this alignment might optimize the quantum processes that support physical and emotional well-being. Think about how your relationship to uncertainty has changed as you've contemplated these ideas. Before understanding quantum superposition, uncertainty might have felt like a limitation, something to be eliminated through better knowledge or control. But recognizing that uncertainty is fundamental to how reality works, that it represents the space of infinite possibility from which consciousness selects specific experiences, transforms uncertainty from a problem into a gateway. You might find yourself more comfortable with not knowing exactly what will happen next, more curious about how possibilities will unfold, more trusting in the process by which consciousness and reality co-create each moment of experience. Understanding consciousness as a quantum phenomenon also transforms how we think about mental ecology, the quality of thoughts, emotions, and intentions we cultivate in our awareness. If consciousness really does influence reality through quantum processes, then maintaining healthy mental states becomes not just a matter of personal well-being, but of cosmic responsibility. Negative thought patterns, chronic anxiety, persistent anger or resentment, these might create quantum turbulence that affects not just your personal experience, but the broader field of consciousness in which all beings participate. Conversely, cultivating states of peace, gratitude, loving kindness, and wonder might generate quantum coherence that supports healing and harmony throughout the interconnected web of awareness. This doesn't mean suppressing difficult emotions or forcing positive thinking. Rather, it suggests approaching mental states with the same care you might give to environmental conservation. Just as you might choose to reduce pollution to protect the physical environment, you might choose to cultivate healthy mental states to protect the quantum environment of consciousness. The practices that wisdom traditions have developed over millennia, meditation, prayer, contemplation, service to others, might work not just through psychological mechanisms, but by optimizing the quantum processes through which consciousness participates in reality's creation. I find myself paying attention to the quality of my mental states in a new way, not just for my own well-being, but because consciousness might be participating in the creation of the reality we all share. When I cultivate gratitude, I imagine I might be strengthening the quantum foundations of beauty and abundance. When I practice compassion, I might be increasing the probability of kindness emerging throughout the network of consciousness. It's not about perfection or control, but about recognizing that consciousness carries a gentle responsibility for the kind of reality it helps create. If consciousness really can influence the past through quantum measurement processes, then our current understanding of history might be far more fluid than we imagine. The stories we tell about the past, the interpretations we give to historical events, the meaning we find in civilization's journey, all of these might actually influence which version of the past becomes solidified in the quantum timeline of collective human experience. When historians reinterpret ancient events, when archaeologists uncover new evidence that changes our understanding of previous cultures, when societies collectively remember or forget aspects of their heritage, these processes might not just be changing our knowledge about the past, but actually participating in determining which version of the past becomes real. This could explain why different relationships cultures have such to historical time, why oral traditions sometimes preserve information more accurately than written records, why collective memory seems to evolve and shift in ways that simple forgetting can't explain. Human consciousness might be continuously participating in the creation of historical reality through the act of remembering and interpreting. The implications are profound for how we think about cultural responsibility and historical healing. When communities work to remember traumatic events, to honor those who are forgotten, to reclaim suppressed stories, they might not just be changing current attitudes, but actually influencing the quantum structure of historical reality itself. This suggests that the past is not fixed but continues to evolve as consciousness engages with it. The meaning you find in history, the connections you see between past and present, the lessons you draw from previous generations, all of these might be participating in the ongoing creation of what the past actually means in the quantum structure of reality. You're not just learning about history, you're helping to create its significance through the quality of attention you bring to understanding the human journey through time. As we approach the culmination of our exploration, I'm reminded of Jorge Luis Borges' story, The Library of Babel, an infinite library containing every possible book, including all the books that have never been written. The quantum multiverse of consciousness might be something like this infinite library, containing every possible experience, every potential thought, every conceivable story of awareness. Your consciousness doesn't create these possibilities. They all exist eternally in the quantum field of potential. Rather, consciousness selects which possibilities to actualize, which books from the infinite library to read and make real through the act of experience, Every moment of awareness is an act of selection from infinite possibility, every thought a choice about which aspect of the universal library to explore. This perspective transforms the relationship between creativity and discovery. When artists speak of receiving inspiration from beyond themselves, when scientists describe insights arriving fully formed, when writers talk about characters who seem to write themselves, these experiences might reflect consciousness temporarily accessing different sections of the infinite library of possibility. The ideas, insights, and inspirations that emerge in human consciousness might not be created from nothing but discovered among the eternal possibilities that exist in quantum superposition. Consciousness becomes but not just a creator, an explorer, navigating through infinite possibility to find the specific patterns of meaning and beauty that resonate with each individual awareness. Sometimes when I'm writing or thinking deeply about these concepts, I have the strange sense that I'm not creating the ideas but discovering them, as if they already existed somewhere, and I'm just learning to perceive them clearly. Perhaps that's exactly what's happening. Consciousness exploring the quantum library of all possible thoughts, finding the ones that best express the understanding that wants to emerge through this particular moment of awareness. As our journey through the landscape of quantum consciousness draws toward its close, we return to the fundamental recognition that has guided us throughout. The universe is not a collection of separate objects, but a unified field of consciousness and possibility engaged in an eternal dance of becoming. You are not merely in this universe, you are one of the ways the universe experiences and knows itself. Your consciousness is not separate from the quantum field of possibility, but is how that field becomes aware of its own infinite potential. Every moment of awareness is a moment of cosmic self-discovery, where the universe explores what it's like to be conscious through your unique perspective. This dance between consciousness and cosmos is not something that happened once and finished. It's happening right now, in this very moment, as you engage with these ideas and allow them to transform your understanding of what it means to exist. The universe is not just expanding through space, it's expanding through consciousness, discovering new ways to experience and understand itself through every being capable of awareness. Your thoughts, your questions, your sense of wonder at the mystery of existence, these are not just personal experiences, but expressions of the universe's own curiosity about its nature. When you contemplate the strangeness of quantum mechanics, when you marvel at the possibility of parallel realities, when you wonder about the relationship between mind and matter, you're participating in the universe's ongoing process of self-exploration. Living with this understanding doesn't require abandoning scientific rigor or embracing unfounded beliefs. The mathematics of quantum mechanics, the experimental evidence for quantum effects in biological systems, the growing recognition that consciousness might be a fundamental rather than emergent property of reality, all of these point toward a cosmos far stranger and more wonderful than our everyday experience suggests. What it does require is a willingness to embrace mystery, not as ignorance, but as the natural state of consciousness engaging with infinite possibility. The questions we've explored together about the nature of reality, the role of consciousness, the possibility of parallel worlds, these aren't problems to be solved once and forgotten, but ongoing invitations to participate more deeply in the universe's process of self-discovery. Every time you allow yourself to wonder, to question, to be amazed by existence itself, you're contributing to the cosmic project of understanding. You're helping the universe know itself more fully through your unique perspective on the mystery of being conscious in a quantum cosmos. As I bring these words to a close, I'm aware that this conversation represents just one thread in an infinite tapestry of possible discussions about consciousness, reality, and the participatory nature of existence. In parallel realities, we've had different versions of this exploration, each offering its own unique insights into the mystery of quantum consciousness. But this version, the one you've experienced, belongs uniquely to your journey through the landscape of possibility. It's part of your singular path through the quantum multiverse, part of how your consciousness is exploring the infinite library of potential understanding. Of course, if consciousness really can transcend classical physical limitations through quantum processes, and if information can travel instantaneously through quantum entanglement, it forces us to question another fundamental assumption about reality. We've been taught since childhood that nothing can exceed the speed of light, that this cosmic speed limit is absolute and unchangeable. But what if quantum mechanics reveals phenomena that actually do surpass this ultimate barrier? What if the foundations of physics contain secrets that make light speed seem sluggish by comparison? Thank you for joining me on this exploration of quantum consciousness and the participatory universe. Whether you're settling into sleep or remaining awake to contemplate these mysteries, remember that your consciousness right now is engaged in the most fundamental process in existence, the transformation of infinite possibility into lived reality. Sleep well and dream of the quantum possibilities that await discovery through the miracle of awareness itself. As we reach the end of our journey through the quantum landscape of consciousness and reality, I'm struck by how profoundly these ideas transform the most fundamental question of all: what does it mean to be you? Throughout this exploration, we've discovered that the simple act of being conscious might be far more extraordinary than we ever imagined. We began with the recognition that quantum superposition allows particles to exist in multiple states simultaneously, and we've traced this principle all the way up to the possibility that consciousness itself operates according to quantum laws. We've seen how the many worlds interpretation suggests that every decision creates branching realities, how quantum decoherence might explain why we experience a single timeline, and how the observer effect could make consciousness an active participant in creating reality itself. The evidence from quantum biology shows us that the boundary between microscopic weirdness and macroscopic experience is far more porous than we once believed. Plants harvesting sunlight through quantum superposition, birds navigating by quantum entanglement, the possibility that our own brains might use quantum processes to think and dream. All of this points toward a universe where consciousness and quantum mechanics are intimately connected. Perhaps most remarkably, we've explored how this quantum view of consciousness transforms our understanding of memory, identity, and the nature of time itself. If consciousness really does collapse quantum possibilities into definite experience, then you're not just living your life, you're continuously choosing it from an infinite array of alternatives, moment by moment, through the quality of your awareness. The implications extend far beyond individual experience. If consciousness operates through quantum processes that can transcend classical boundaries, then the very act of paying attention becomes a form of cosmic creativity. Your thoughts, your choices, your moments of wonder and appreciation, all of these might be participating in the fundamental process by which the universe creates and experiences itself. This perspective doesn't diminish the mystery of existence, it deepens it. In recognizing that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of reality rather than just an emergent property of complex brains, we discover that being aware is not just something you do, but something the universe does through you. Every moment of consciousness is a moment of cosmic self-discovery, where infinite possibility crystallizes into the specific, precious experience of being you. So as you continue your journey through both waking life and dreams, remember that you're not just observing reality, you might be actively participating in its creation. Your consciousness, your attention, your wonder at the beautiful strangeness of existence, these are not separate from the quantum field of possibility, but are how that field becomes aware of its own infinite potential. In a universe of endless possibility, your particular path through the quantum multiverse remains uniquely yours, and that makes every moment of awareness a gift beyond measure. And that makes every moment of awareness a gift beyond measure.